What's going on, everybody? Jay How here. In this Diablo 3 video, we're going to talk about the Demon Hunter and what to expect in patch 2.3. Now, there's some new items, but not a lot's changed. But we're going to talk about some of the stuff that did change and things that you can look forward to going into Season 4 and beyond. Now, first and foremost, if you're a fan of the Natalia set and the spin to win, then you are in luck because that is still currently one of the top builds on the PTR, and it is still doing a ton of damage while mixing in one of the new pieces and possibly two pieces in patch 2.3, and we'll talk about those. Now, one item in particular that is rather enticing is the Wraps of Clarity. These are new bracers for the Demon Hunter, and you'll see in the secondary there, your hatred generators reduce your damage taken by anywhere between 30 to 35% for 5 seconds. That's really nice because when you are using something like Strafe and you are spinning and winning, the whole idea was to simply stutter step and cast everything in between. So it would look a little bit something like this. And so utilizing your hatred generator would allow you to take less damage. And that's very good because as a Demon Hunter, you have to be able to survive at higher greater rifts because you are taking a ton of damage. So looking at that, that's a very nice item to use all the way around for several builds for the Demon Hunter. The good part about that is hatred generators also include the chakrams when you're using the Spines of Seething Hatred, and also your elemental arrow when you're using the Kreider shot. Now that leads us to another item here, the Demon Hunter belt, Hunter's Wrath. This also says your hatred generators attack 30% faster and deal anywhere between 30 to 40% increased damage. Now that was interesting because this was wondered, does it work with your chakrams and does it work with your elemental arrow? Now, for days, this went unanswered, but after a few days, Blizzard put up a post saying that this will be reworded in the future, and that unfortunately it will not work with those generators. It is only intended to work with your primary skills that generate hatred. So, unfortunately, that's where that is. But, looking at it, you can have a little bit of fun with it. Utilizing the Wraps of Clarity to reduce damage, and then using the Hunter's Wrath to be able to say, hey, do a little bit of damage with your hatred generators. There are going to be purposes for this. It might not necessarily be in-game solo builds, but it will find its way in. This makes use of stuff like the Leonine Bow of Hashir, or even possibly Odyssey's End, to where it utilizes your Entangling Shot, or your Bola shot. So there is a little bit of fun to be had with it, and I'll be coming up with some of those builds, and it's actually some stuff that I've run on the PTR. It's not overpowered, but you're definitely capable of running a Greater Rift 50 with a hatred-only build, or a hatred generator-only build. Now you can mix in stuff like multi-shot, but we'll get into that here in a minute. Now we take a look at the new Demon Hunter bow, the Yang's Recurve. Multi-shot attacks 40% faster. This is an incredibly fast fire rate when you start looking at different skills. So we'll take a look at multi-shot with and without it. So let's say we're running something like Arsenal, one of the normal standard fire ones. So we'll put on an old one, an old bow, and we'll fire. And you can see multi-shot going out there. And you can also see that our hatred is being gobbled up. Now, I'm going to show you a couple ways to do that, because when you look at it like this, we're now firing much faster, but we don't have enough hatred. So what's the point in attacking faster if you're not going to have the hatred? And so you kind of got to weigh the pros and cons of that. Now, as a Demon Hunter, it's really hard to stand still and do any bit of attacking. So what they're trying to accomplish, at least in my interpretation, is so that you could stop, fire off a couple shots, and then move along. Normally you're having to shoot, move, shoot, and move. And for these stronger skills that don't really have that much damage when you have to slow fire them, it doesn't make a lot of sense to use them. So they're finding ways to make use of multi-shot. Now, one of the things that's really nice is utilizing Kanai's Cube. Now, you can take something as your armor slot. Now, here was when I was running a hatred generator only build. You can use something like Cinder Coat. Now, if you're using a fire build, this is the number one to go with because it automatically reduces 30% of the resource cost of fire skills, and this can be used across the board. If you did opt to go with something other than a fire skill, you could choose something like Pride's Fall, which also reduces it by 30%. The difference is, with this one, you have to not take damage for 5 seconds, so it's best if you're using a fire skill to automatically use the Cinder Coat. So you can go one direction or the other. So we put that on, we have the Cinder Coat on, and now you're going to see that we're going to fast fire quite a few shots. And it is in rapid succession. Now, the other part about Yang's Recurve, and this did get altered after I had already rolled this reduces the resource cost, and you'll see that in the primary stats there, anywhere between 36 and 46%. So it's really nice to be able to use this in conjunction with a Pride's Fall or a Cinder Coat, because now you can get off several multi-shot. Now, I'm on a non-seasoned character, but once patch 2.3 hits, you'll be able to make use of the Dead Man's Legacy Quiver. This says that multi-shot hits twice between enemies that are below 50 to 60% health. Now, at rapid fire, in certain situations, and once you hit that break point in terms of monster health, that's a lot of damage being pumped out. Now, early tests are still showing that the Natalia's Spin to Win build is still the way to go, but finding ways to utilize that either in group play, and it is fairly effective in solo play, it just doesn't add up to the numbers, but it can be very effective moving forward with the Yang's Recurve as a main item for the multi-shot spec. So it's very important to keep an eye on that moving forward into patch 2.3. Now, a couple of the other items to look forward to in patch 2.3 is the change to the Izakab, which is now listed as Vala's Bequest. This says that Strafe now pierces, and it says to note, Demolition will only pierce once, but that is something to utilize. It might not necessarily replace the Balefire, but it certainly makes for a very good option in certain situations. Also to note is the Demon Hunter's new weapon, the Demon's Demise. This is a new legendary Hand Crossbow, which says Spike Trap, Sticky Trap, spreads to nearby enemies when it explodes. Now, they've made a lot of changes to Spike Trap, and that will be covered in a future video once the patch goes live. There very easily could be changes to all of this gear moving forward once the patch goes live. For now, we have a pretty good idea of what direction the Demon Hunter is going. So, Season 4 will have a focus on being able to utilize spike traps in some form or fashion. The Natalia's Spin to Win build is still extremely powerful, and if you like that, it's going to be there. But there are other options. If you weren't a fan of that build, you can now utilize items like Yang's Recurve, or if you want to just play around and have some fun, or find some other in-game builds to use with friends, you can utilize stuff like Hunter's Wrath Belt, and then mixing that in with Wraps of Clarity to be able to survive. Now, for group play, you might not necessarily need Wraps of Clarity, and could probably spec more for damage. So, to recap patch 2.3 and the Demon Hunter, and especially moving into Season 4, you have the Natalia's Spin to Win build, which, at right now, it's still looking to be one of the top builds going forward. You can't get away from it because it's so much fun to play, but if you're not a fan of that build, utilizing multi-shot with Yang's Recurve and Dead Man's Legacy becoming available for everybody can be very potent. Keep in mind that Unhallowed Essence has remained unchanged, and the 6-piece bonus says your generators and multi-shot deal 15% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. So, mixing that together makes for a very strong and in-game viable build. It might not necessarily be the top right now, but check back once patch 2.3 goes live, and I'll be covering all of those topics once again. Also, to look forward to, your hatred generators are going to find ways into your builds. Wraps of Clarity, very fun to use a primary skill with because it's going to help you stay alive. Also, Hunter's Wrath, the belt. This is going to allow you to attack faster and to have them deal more damage. Using Kanai's Cube and what you might have seen earlier with Depth Diggers, as well as some other key items and specking and re-enchanting your gear a certain way, can actually make for some very large crits using nothing but hatred generators. Once patch 2.3 goes live and everything is in order, I'll be bringing you guys more builds based around all of those elements. There's going to be a lot of fun to be had with the Demon Hunter moving forward. Now, if you're a fan of certain builds, those are remaining unchanged or they're getting buffed up, especially with the inclusion of Kanai's Cube. So keep that in mind. Also, one thing to note, for you demon hunters. You can use a sword, and that brings me to a very important topic. Thunderfury. This is very important. This allows you to deal lightning damage to enemies hit. Now this works really well for certain builds because it says each enemy hit has their attack speed and movement speed reduced by 30%. Now this jumps up to 5 targets. Now at first you might be wondering, why in the world would you do that? The main reason is simply because of Bane of the Trapped. Bane of the Trap allows for increased damage against enemies under the effects of control impairing effects. This allows you to stay at distance to be able to proc your Bane of the Trap to deal more damage. Now, you might be looking at something like your Calamity thinking, hey, that's the first thing that I'm going to put in Kanai's Cube because it's going to be the most effective right away. And you might not be wrong. However, if you have a Bane of the Trap gem, it might actually work better in certain builds to be able to utilize the Thunderfury in that weapon slot. The Bane of the Trapped at level 41 says it does just over 27% more damage to enemies that are affected by control impairing effects, which is what the Thunderfury does. So keep that in mind when you're starting patch 2.3, that it might be good to go ahead and put a Thunderfury in that slot. Now, depending on the build, you might not need Bane of the Trapped, or you might elect to go another direction, depending on what gems fit that build best. But it is something to keep in mind looking forward. Now, again, I'll be having all of these tips and more builds once patch 2.3 goes live. So if you're not subscribed already and you're looking for more Diablo and other gaming content, be sure and subscribe. So as you all know, I am a huge Demon Hunter player, and I am definitely looking forward to patch 2.3 to be able to take the Demon Hunter to the next level, as well as other characters. So if you're a fan of other characters and classes, also be sure and subscribe for those builds as well. Now, if you're a big Demon Hunter fan like I am and you want to find out ways to utilize Yang's Recurve or other items, be sure and comment below and let me know ways that you're using them or what you're excited about with the new items. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Till next time, happy hunting. See you again.